Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all. I am Sergi Alegre, Director General of Airport Regions Council, and thank you for being here with us. As you know, this is a webinar organized by Airport Regions Council with POLIS and with the support of the Committee of the Regions. I'm glad to inform you that we are more than 150 people attending this webinar. So we were talking before, commenting before, to go into the recording, that it looks like it has been a good idea to have this webinar, because we planned to talk and to join the webinar, to organize the webinar 1.5 months ago, the three organizations, as we think that it was a good moment to deal with the issue. For sure, the issue is quite complex, quite important, quite complicated, quite exciting as well, that it will not be finished, it will not be over today. But we think it's a very good step, not a step, but a good step in the direction we think we should go. And in that sense, I do really thank all the speakers. It has been a pleasure, and all of them, they were ready to participate and open to participate in our webinar, to share with us their point of view, their proposals, and their ideas. And just for the ones you don't know, Operations Council, just 1 minute, it's the organizations of cities and regions of the vast majority of them in Europe, but not all of them. And that we have the cities and the regions with an airport in the territory. And we were settled down, we were created 27 years ago. We are based in Brussels, and our goal is to represent them, to defend their interests, that there is, in a sentence, to get the best from the airport. So to support the airport, to work with the airport, and to try to minimize and to, if possible, to compensate the negative aspects of any airport, especially in the issues of environmental aspects, mobility, territorial integration, and economic dimension. As you can imagine, urban air mobility, as our members are cities and regions, the vast majority metropolitan ones in Europe, urban air mobility is an issue, and a very important issue, and that's why we thought to organize it with POLIS, with these organizations, the biggest organization, of course, for sure, in Europe, dealing with the mobility, with the urban mobility, especially from the public point of view, and with the Committee of the Regions, of course. Therefore, we have organized this webinar. As you know, there will be at the end of each time for questions and answer. Hopefully, it's a very interesting time of the webinar, like the rest of the speeches. With no more introduction, it's a pleasure for me to give the floor to Yves Aucret from POLIS. He will be he will introduce all the speakers, and he will moderate the debate at the end of the session. Ivo, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergi, and I hope to see you back also in the panel discussion. Indeed, urban air mobility is a new theme for cities and regions. It brings challenges to our I wanted to say streets, but it's more complex than that. It brings challenges to our three-dimensional urban space, challenges in view of planning. So what role do we give urban air mobility within the entire urban system? And the urban mobility system specifically is of my network's interest. What role does the local authority or regional authority play in view of regulating urban air mobility services, movements of flight, and also what are practical infrastructural issues related to urban air mobility. Yeah? So how do we practically fit these new devices into our cities? So these are all things we want to discuss today. for that we have 4 excellent speakers. Vassilis Agouridas from the UIC2 initiative, Kathryn Bulanowski from EPF, Ruud van Iwaarde of Brainport Eindhoven, and Elena Maximova from ARC. We'll hear later from them, but we also want to emphasize the importance of urban air mobility at policy level. So there are important developments on that end. There is EASA guidelines on its way. There's a whole body of regulations regarding use space and urban air mobility. And also in documentation of DG Move, urban air mobility is taking an important role. Who better than the Committee of the Regions, the European institution that guards the interests of regions and cities amongst the European, in the European decision-making framework, is better placed than to comment on that. And we are very happy to have Mr. Władysław Ortyl here. He's president of the Podkarpackie region, a member of the Committee of the Regions, dealing with these issues. And I give the floor to Mr. Ortyl. Be aware, or be to the participants, please notice that there is a translation function in the taskbar of Zoom. It's called, now I have to find it myself, it's called translation. And you can select English as a language because Mr. Ortyl will speak in Polish. So if you select that button, you can hear the translation of Mr. Ortyl's speech. Mr. Ortyl, the floor is yours.
Dziękuję bardzo, panie przewodniczący. Szanowni państwo, bardzo.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being able to talk about the challenges and possibilities related to the urban mobility in the cities and in the regions. I would like to mention peculiarities for Poland and Polish Podkarpackie province. My region is located in southeastern Poland, and I would like to present a few issues. I am the marshal of the Podkarpackie province, which borders with the Ukraine, and it's in the southeast part of our country. Today, we are often sort of referred to in the news because of the war, because of the aggression, Putin's Russia aggression against the Ukraine. Of course, we deal with this problem with the refugees, with the thousands of refugees, but also we need to continue our tasks, our duties, and that's why I'm here with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to emphasize the meaning, the significance of the issue, of the topic for the regions and for the cities. That is the issue of urban air mobility, and why it is so important. The answer is yes, for sure, undoubtedly, but if urban mobility is to be successful, it has to be safe. It has to be safe for entrepreneurs, for platforms, for air force platforms, for the end users, and it also has to be safe for the general, for all the people, for the society. It has to be accepted by the society as a new thing that gets into life with more and more effectiveness and boldness, and it's present in our life. We see all that the variety and density of the operations, the drones and the air taxi vehicles, this is something that has not been there before, has not been noticed before. We need to think more about the safety. We need to think about the protection of the society and about the quality of life, of urban life. It cannot be sort of violated, infringed upon. I think that in order to sort out a lot of problems, we need to take account of the factors that are positive, beneficial, not only for the legislative bodies, but also the local governments in the cities and local governments, and also the citizens, as I mentioned at the very beginning of my presentation. I think that we also need to know what we need to focus on and what should be our priority. We all know that the Agency for Aviation Safety Association is working on that, and they deal with the main challenges. But also, as I told you, these are challenges that are for regional cities, authorities, not only in terms of the safety aspect, security aspect, but also from the perspective of the environment. We have noise, and we have some negative aspects as well that are in this space. What do we have to focus on? First of all, we need to have a look at large, significant possibilities. For example, in the field of medicine or emergency transport, which is often much faster in the city. We need to have a look at how it all connects, how it is all connected with the issue of landing, takeoff, sorry, and how it happens that the vehicles are there at the emergency sites, and it's also then the emergency security or authorities offices. This is very, really important sort of a source that we need to draw from. The European Committee of the Regions prepared their opinion that Ulrika Landgren was a rapporteur of this from Sweden, and in this region, in this aspect, the Committee of the Region recognized the huge potential for using drones at the local and regional level, especially in the places and in the parts of Europe that is not so densely populated. And also, you need to remember that the Committee of the Regions conducted the analysis of the regional impacts and social impact with regard to drones. And let me emphasize it again. It's really important that the actions that we undertake are socially accepted. I want to show that in regard of at the time of the COVID pandemic, we used drone with a transportation module. Using drones in the medical transportation shows that we have the area and readiness here, and Polish industry is ready, of course, to undertake the challenge. I also want to say a few things about our province of the Podkarpackie, because we started aviation tests for unified harmonious aviation mobility. We have a project that is co-financed from the framework Horizon Europe 2020, and it is conducted with the help of co-initiative with CESAR, and the drones are to ensure control of accidents. They have to bring, they should be used for regulating and standardization of flights in the area of urban cities. And in the first phase, around 160 flights will be performed for public utility. We want that the demonstration phase starts. It started in November last year, and it will be continued till through the year 2022. We will be sharing reports and experience with you from the application of 3 autonomous scenarios of flights with the use of drones, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, the year 2015 was a year that was pretty important in the Podkarpackie region, because it was then that we established the Center for Unmanned Technology Center, which is to promote safe flights and safe implementation and application of drones. We established cluster for unmanned system, and the Technical College of Rzeszów and the University of Rzeszów were involved in it. Let me remind you that it's not only the engineering sciences that are of importance here, the social aspect is to be taken account of. We are also supported by the Aviation Valley, the main aviation cluster that is functioning in the Podkarpackie region. In order to, by way of, summing up, I want to emphasize that these are all very small steps, but the revolution in this area is already there, right behind the doors. And I think it may take a lot of time and sort of sacrifice and involvement on our part and commitment. But however, I'm sure that we need to continue these actions and intensify our efforts, and also to exchange the experiences in this respect. And also that comes with without doubt, I declare here the support of the Committee of the Region and the support of the local government in this respect. We know that the stake is huge and we have a lot of challenges here, and the local government, as usual, can cope with these tasks. I wish you very successful and fruitful discussion, and I hope that the local aspect will be taken account of, and we will impatiently wait for further events and actions in this respect. And of course, we are looking forward to applications that will be of much use here. Once again, let me share my solidarity with the Ukrainian nation and sort of contempt the activities and actions that are related to the attack against the Ukraine. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Ortyl. Very helpful and very insightful introduction. You touched upon several issues, the actual use cases of the drones, the role of European and national economies in this new innovation ecosystem as well, and the role of local authorities and how they will work with these new technologies. Thank you very much. Thank you once again. I understood you had other obligations later today, so we thank you anyway that you have been here with us for now, and hope to continue the cooperation with the Committee of the Regions and its various committees. Thank you very much. I will return to my original audio settings for one. I hope you can do that yourself, and I also will return to the agenda. Trying to share. I will share my the program once again, so everybody is clear of what will happen next in the program. So we have looked for 4 people who are let's say, who are trailblazers, who are leaders in their fields in bringing urban air mobility forward. First in line is Vassilis Agouridas from Airbus. He is one of the key community builders around urban air mobility. We'll hear from him what urban air mobility brings in view of potential and challenges, and also how the ecosystem looks like around this new technology and service area. And then we turn to different stakeholders in the ecosystem. We start with the user, not to be underestimated as an important factor in the whole urban air mobility discussion. With Kathy Bulanowski from European Passenger Federation. She will talk about her organization's view on urban air mobility, but also their involvement in research and innovation activities in this field. And so will Ruud van Iwaarde from Brainport Development Eindhoven, an municipal organization, a city-led organization that is also deeply involved in R&I surrounding urban air mobility, trying to initiate useful activity around the topic. And last but not least, we'll hear from Elena Maximova, the person who has brought this event together, also about the ARC position on this document, on this topic, with a paper they have produced as well. And so each of them will give a short presentation, and then we'll enter into a discussion. In the meantime, I want you to engage with us through the chat. I'll also keep an eye on the Q&A, but the chat might be more lively to work with. So preferably use the chat. I also want to inform you that the event is recorded for future use, and that also we will share the presentations that have been addressed. We will also connect with the Committee of the Regions to get a copy of the speech of Mr. Ortyl. I think that would be useful as well to document the event. Okay, so I think in terms of introductory remarks, we are ready to go. I will start with giving the floor to Vassilis. Vassilis is the person, when somebody in Europe says urban air mobility, Vassilis appears. He is central in the discussion on how to connect the different stakeholders, industry, authorities, research in this field. And I'm happy to give him the floor for a very short pitch about the business ecosystem.
Thank you, Ivo. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if I still have control of the presentation. Perhaps, Elena, we need to move it to the first slide. That was my surprise slide at the end. So thank you for the introduction. I think my intervention comes at a very good point in terms of what is happening in terms of the regulatory perspective, but also the increasing awareness from local authorities. And Mr. Ortyl already gave a perspective about the importance from the local authority perspective. The good news is that at the European level, I think we are pioneering in the topic of urban air mobility and the role of local authorities, as it has been established since 2017, the so-called UIC2 or UAM Urban Air Mobility Initiative Cities Community. I cannot see my slides. Okay. I hope everybody can also see. Can you confirm, please?
Yes, I can see it. Perfect.
Okay. So I'm working for Airbus, but I have different hats. Either as Airbus, where I lead the public co-creation ecosystem outreach, or as leader of the UIC2 that, as I mentioned, was established in 2017 as part of the EU Smart Cities Marketplace, or through my role of chairman of the UAM committee of ASD Europe, which is the Aerospace and Defense Industries Association. So you can see different perspectives, but this is also part of what is a challenge for urban air mobility and the emerging ecosystem. How can we bridge the different perspectives? So here today, I will talk from the UIC2 perspective. The aim of the UIC2 or the mission is to drive the sustainable and responsible transition of urban mobility to the third or vertical dimension. So you see, we're not talking here about air mobility or drones or whatever per se, but it's about, as we take the local authority perspective, is about urban mobility. And in fact, the third dimension, it is one of the additional modes that citizens, local authorities will have to deal with. So this is the standpoint of how the discussion and the issues are coming from the local authority perspective. I'll go to my next slide. Okay, so this is an illustration about how the initiative looks like. So it's about cities coming from different parts of Europe, but not only, because this work, and in fact the mindset and approach of the initiative has also attracted the interest from cities and regions outside Europe, like the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in US or the Mie Prefecture in Japan. In fact, what this community is about is the voice of cities and regions in urban air mobility. The members are purely cities and regions. However, this does not mean that we're not engaging with other partners of the ecosystems. In fact, this initiative is about to prompt the cities, whether they like or they don't like drones, to be involved. Because a lot of things are happening today where local authorities need to be active. And of course, you can see a number of knowledge partners, including ARC and POLIS. There are a lot of definitions about what is urban air mobility. from US, from Europe, if you take an industrial point of view, then if you take a strictly urban mobility point of view, urban mobility is different from regional or even suburban mobility. So there is some sort of confusion and a lot of different terms. In majority, these terms are coming from the aviation industry, and in an attempt to try to differentiate how the different products may fit to the mobility systems. What the cities in the URC2 have done is to develop a definition that comes really from the local authority perspective. So from this perspective, we take urban to use it only as a semantic and not in literal terms what it means for mobility or urban mobility, to indicate that in fact is about flying at low level over populated areas. And this is a definition, very low altitude urban traffic. So we're talking about vehicles that fly, aircraft. And this does not necessarily mean drones or eVTOLs or taxis. It could even be, from this perspective, even an airship, a balloon. And this is really strictly from the local authority perspective. When you have urban traffic over your city, over populated areas, which are the risks, a number of risks as mentioned by Mr. Ortyl, and risks that the ongoing regulation at the European level tries to ensure they are addressed. The big difference here is when you read that, you can say we have helicopters, but where is the big difference here is that all of this will have to happen at scale. It has to happen at scale if we want to really reap the benefits from this technology, and it has to be integrated in a sustainable manner with ground surface mobility systems. Otherwise, if it is not a complementary mode and a standalone one, we will not see the benefits as a society. I wanted to give you a sort of quick overview how the initiative, the UIC2 is structured. So the aim is to drive this sustainable and responsible transition. So we have to take the prerequisites of urban mobility that you see in blue. And then there are three main pillars upon which the initiative and the work of the cities are shaped, about establishing public and private support, whether this is for funding, financing, or co-creation of regulations. And this is where I think in Europe we have been quite pioneering the work. It's about seeking the synergies between ground and air, and it's also co-creating with citizens. And all of this in having the cities and regions in the center. Based on these interfaces, different task forces are shaped, have been shaped, led by cities and regions that are members of the initiative. This initiative and the cities have had a number of impact already, whether coming from work made with the European Investment Bank or with contribution in the creation of European funding in Horizon 2020, specifically on the mobility aviation interface and the role of cities, even prompting national funding in different countries, work with the European Space Agency. One of the most impactful, it has been the work on the Airspace regulatory framework and the role of local authorities that we can discuss below, with DG Home, with OECD, and with DG Move in developing the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan Practitioner Guide. And of course, interfacing with major players from the ground mobility. So you see from here that in fact, we have been creating here a city-centric platform to ensure a holistic approach to urban mobility, proactively engage with citizens, and co-create with all the stakeholders. I just mentioned about the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan. The European Commission has been developing for almost a decade now the so-called SUMP, or Sustainable Urban Mobility Planning process or cycle that you see here, based on 8 principles that in fact cities and regions are encouraged to apply in developing in an integrated manner their urban and mobility planning. The challenge here was, how can we fit the urban air mobility, this emerging mode, into this context? So we have been working with the Commission and with ELTIS, which is the observatory, the European Observatory of Urban Mobility, and we have capitalized on the experience that the UIC2 cities and regions bring and the lessons learned by pioneering the last 5 years this type of work, and have developed this practitioner briefing, which is now an official European Commission document that you can find on the website that you can see there. This was published in December, and it gives the first initial thoughts on the issues, challenges about urban air mobility from the local authority perspective, and how this could be part of the SUMP process cycle. So that was the part of, say, the integrated mobility. Another emerging issue, it is coming from the airspace. Already industry and the regulatory authorities are working hard towards what is called the integrated airspace. And the challenge there is how we can capitalize on the digitalization technologies in order to have this integrated airspace, which is critical for the safety and security of all air operations. And the whole idea and aim here is to integrate all the different flying vehicles in order to be efficient and, of course, not to collide between themselves. So a priori, I would say the safety and security are the top priorities, whether we're coming from the industry or the regulatory perspective. So the local authorities shouldn't worry about this topic. The point here that actually comes as an emerging issue is that this is, I would say, the industry mainly perspective. What we see is that some issues are raised when we go to this low level altitude, where we have the interface of these air vehicles really flying in the cities. And there are some governance topics that we have identified the last years that relate to the actual role of local authorities. So the cities really recognize the opportunities that these new technologies, whether it is an air taxi type air vehicle or a drone for medical emergencies, could bring. But at the same time, the cities realize that these bring new tasks and responsibilities for them. And the cities or regions acknowledge that they are the level of government which is closer to the cities. So, sorry, to the citizens. So from this perspective, they should have an influential or even deciding role on the governance of the urban airspace, which is part of the U-space. So having this in mind, the cities of the UIC2 in December 2020, as part of the Amsterdam Drone Week, they have created a manifesto to express their arguments of why they are an important partner and that the regulation could not take place without them. Here, there are sometimes misunderstandings that people think that the cities claim to do the work of the specialists. This is not the case. The cities do not want to manage the airspace from the technology and regulatory perspective. They want to be a recognized stakeholder, and in certain cases, when it can have an impact to the citizens, to have even a deciding or influential role. So this manifesto has been already supported for more than 30 cities around Europe, even you see for cities outside Europe, and from a number of associations and organizations.
Vassilis, can you conclude?
Yep. Absolutely. What has been the impact of this manifesto is that, in fact, last April, we have had the actual regulation that has been approved by the Commission and the specific Article 18F that recognizes the need to have a coordination mechanism, including at local level, the different entities. This, in turn, has been translated over the last year in a draft document that gives guidance material about how this coordination could take place. This is quite a novel approach for aviation in general, and this is where I think Europe now is pioneering by acknowledging officially the role of local entities or authorities in the whole design of the U-space or low-level airspace. And part of these new things there is that there are certain processes and roles the local authorities could have there is even a new type of a role, the so-called Airspace coordinator. If you want to know more about that, this draft guidance material is actually out since mid of December on public consultation. So I would like to encourage all the local authorities to have a look at this document. You can find it at the EASA website. You can download the document NPA 2021-14, pages 92 to 100 is the details of Article 18F, and you can provide your comments back to EASA, to the European Commission, by the 15th of March. This is how I would like to conclude. We're talking about an emerging ecosystem in UEM, but I think we're all realizing it's more about a social business ecosystem. It's not what the technology can do, but what we want the technology to do for us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Vassilis. Very clear. I think I like as an being employed by a city network, the comment that cities want to be a recognized stakeholder. I think that's a very essential message you give, and you also provide the platform to make this possible. Also an open invitation to all of you to take a look at the EASA draft guidelines open for consultation. I hope maybe somebody
and of course, can... Ivo, if I may, if you have in our audience any city or region that they want to be involved in this topic, they are welcome to join the UIC2. There are no fees. It's a European platform, and they don't need to necessarily like drones or do something with drones. This is about a new dimension that is coming, and they have to be active now.
Okay, there's one question in the chat comment where Günther Martin, I think can I see the full name? Martis asks, what does sustainability mean in this context? So
in this context, it means that we follow the SUMP, the Sustainable Urban Mobility process cycle, and we follow the guidelines that are coming from the EU Green Deal and the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It does not mean only to use electric. There is energy consumption there. How can we optimize this energy consumption? For what purposes? Who is going to benefit? Inclusivity, affordability. There is a new technology. Certainly, we need to take the responsibility on how we are going to use a new technology. If you take the inclusivity perspective and the affordability, it means that everybody can fly. And from the technology perspective and even the regulatory perspective, this could be possible. But then it comes the, I would say, local authority or society perspective. We can have increased noise or visual pollution. So is this what we want? So as a society and as citizens, whether we use it or not, we need to take some responsibility. And this is where we call for the whole society to work together, to co-create how we want to save this. Where are the limits we put? Who is going to use it and for what reason?
No, so a global framework on sustainability that's locally discussed and applied.
And by the way, just to give you also a hint, with my ASD hat, the industry association is taking this very responsibly, and we have an ongoing study on developing a sustainable development framework for assessing the use cases and development of the overall UAM ecosystem.
Okay, thank you, Vassilis. We have to move to the next speaker, to Kathy from European Passenger Federation. Vassilis, there's one question in the Q&A that I hope you can answer in writing. It's a question of Roger Pullen asking about a very concrete use case in terms of border control. So I think that's something that you might follow up bilaterally, or the answer will be published to all, of course. Okay, Kathy, we move to you, and a very important component or part of the ecosystem is, of course, the user. We've worked with European Passenger Federation for decades now. We know you are very engaged on public transport, but How do you look at urban air mobility? The floor is yours. Yep.
Thank you, Ivo. Thank you for the introduction and of course for inviting me today. Always happy to bring the passenger perspective to these discussions. So my name is Katie Bulanowski. I am a project officer at the European Passengers Federation. And very briefly, we are a nonprofit membership organization located in Belgium. So that means, of course, that we have members. We have 39 members, all non-governmental organizations located in 21 countries in Europe, and they also represent the passengers in their respective countries. So essentially, we are the voice of the public transport users in Europe, and that means we look at different modes. So we look at rail, we look at road, we look at water, and of course we look at air. And today we're here to talk about urban air mobility. And so really our main objective in all of the work that we do and at the heart of what we do is really to put the passengers first, to put them at the center of everything that we do. And so I won't go through all of our objectives. You can read them because we're here, of course, to talk about urban air mobility. So I'll see if I can go to my next slide. Okay, perfect. So at EPF, we're involved in a Horizon 2020 funded project called AURORA, and that is safe urban air mobility for European citizens. And in this project, we work with 8 partners, all from 5 different EU countries with different experience in different sectors. So research institutions, technological partners, and then organizations like EPF, for example. And really our project focuses on urban air mobility, but from the view of emergency services and how UAM can benefit emergency medical services, for example. And so really we begin our project by looking at user needs, looking at stakeholder needs and their viewpoints. And so we started our project by involving stakeholders, by involving we will involve citizens to see what their perspectives are in with regard to urban air mobility, and that will then feed into the rest of our project. So the technology that we'll develop, of course, will take into account their perspectives, but also the integration part as well, because of course urban air mobility deals with urban areas. And so we're looking at not only the integration in the airspace, but also on the ground level as well. And then at the end of our project, we will be doing demonstrations. And within our project, we have 3 different pilot locations in Italy, in Spain, and in the Czech Republic. And based on everything that we learned, that we collected from citizens and from stakeholders, we will do demonstrations. And again, we're dealing with emergency services, so that can mean the transport of urgent medical goods, that can mean firefighting, but also chemical emergencies. So we're trying to have a bit of a broader scope there. And then very briefly at the end of my presentation, the work that we do at EPF really, as I mentioned, is to involve end users, involve the people perspective of these new services. So we're doing stakeholder engagement activities, but also citizen engagement activities. And very recently, just to highlight some of the work that we've done, we finalized our first round of stakeholder interviews where we discussed the different aspects of UAM regarding aviation safety and security, regarding integration in cities, environmental challenges, but then of course also the societal acceptance perspective. And so we interviewed 8 stakeholders, all from different areas of society, because we don't only want to focus on the technological part, we want to hear from different perspectives. So we spoke with civil society representatives, we spoke with cities and city networks, research institutions, but also authorities, so that again, we could have this sort of holistic viewpoint when looking at UAM. So you'll see here just a few of our major findings regarding the societal acceptance part. But of course, if you're interested in reading more about our project and reading more about the societal acceptance or the safety part, you can go to our website and read the full report. But in general, what we've noticed is really that awareness, it should be created for UAM citizens, but also cities should be aware of the benefits of urban air mobility so that they can use it to their advantage. And as you can see here, also emergency operations we saw are quite generally more accepted than, for example, the other use cases. So again, if you're interested in reading our report and hearing more, feel free to ask questions. Happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. There's more? Oh, that's the end of the presentation.
That's the
Okay,
end of
yeah, just to be sure, to be absolutely sure. Okay, yeah, it's what we notice in a lot of the activities is that at the moment there is a lot of focus on very say very use cases that are linked to for instance, yeah, bringing medicines, drugs to places, but the actual people carriers, air taxis, for instance, that's something that's you're also looking at in the study, or not?
So within Aurora, we're really focusing more so on the emergency use cases, less on the passenger transport. Of course, sometimes in our activities, you do ask those questions. We've done a few surveys and we did a workshop with stakeholders. And it is interesting, of course, to hear the perspective of people, which use cases they find more acceptable. So we have asked more general questions about that, but in general, we try to focus on the greater good type.
Yeah.
Cases.
And e-commerce, was that looked at? That's a question from Arthur.
So similar
sure.
as the passenger transport, the e-commerce, of course, we would ask a question or two to see how people feel about that in regards in relation to the other use cases, but less focus on that as well.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. We'll hear more from you in the panel discussion. And we move now to another principal stakeholder in the field, and city of Eindhoven, or the innovation ecosystem body linked to the city, to the Eindhoven region, Eindhoven Brainport. We have Ruud van Iwaarde with us, who is also active in a research and innovation project in this field. And I give you the floor, Ruud. You will explain what you are doing in that field. Yep.
Thank you, Ivo. My name is Ruud van Iwaarde. I work for Brainport Development. That's a regional economic development agency in the southeast of the Netherlands, in the Eindhoven region. And I currently am project coordinator for a project called Flying Forward. In short, that's FF 2020. Now, that's a European funded research and innovation project with about 12 partners. And we focus on the thing that Vassilis mentioned earlier as one of the biggest issues to solve. We fully agree on that. To make it scalable, UAM is a big job. A lot of things are already possible, as you all know, in the technical sense. A lot of regulation is in place and developing. A lot of things are not yet possible, like unmanned or autonomous flight. So a lot of things have to be developed. But let's say if we take away all the technical barriers, we solved those things, we solved regulatory things, then what would halt the use of UAM? And these are the things that we are looking at in the project. Next sheet, please. Okay, I was also asked to tell a bit about research and innovation in UAM. I think a very useful starting point for a presentation on the research in safe and secure urban air mobility can be found on the Optics project website. The link is in the presentation that you will get. More in-depth information on our project can be found on the link ff2020.eu. Exciting for European countries and European people in this call is that a lot of project calls open or upcoming that are UAM related. So a lot of research is being done. Now, I can go into the details of the project. There's not enough time, so I will take you through some of the questions that we try to answer. First of all, if we take a look at the next sheet, and it's been addressed by other speakers as well. Citizens ask, should I want this UAM? There are quite a lot of reservations. There are pros and cons for this. Main thing is, who will they look for answers? Vassilis gave an answer. He thinks it's local government, municipalities or regions. I think he could be right. How sure can a citizen be that this organization has their interests or fears in mind? And by the way, what is the drone that just flew by and did it fill my backyard? That's a basic question, right? On the next slide, we have companies. The main point is, how can we become more successful with urban air mobility? Questions they might have is there a business case to be made, or will the price per flight be low enough to make a profit? Can it deal with all law and regulation in a cost-efficient manner? What are even the laws and regulations in this field, and how can I make it clear to customers that I'm compliant to all subject law and regulation? On the next sheet, there are governments, and they wonder about how can we make urban air mobility benefit society. Some of the questions that they have, and we'll go into these in the panel discussion, I'm sure. How can I cater to the need for trust of citizens? So for citizens to accept or embrace urban air mobility. And step over maybe the noise and visual pollution, they would definitely need to trust that what is flying up there is safe, secure, and compliant. How to handle all the law and the regulations that are still in flux. So a lot of rules, regulations are still being formed right now and will change during time. And how can I, let's say, as a municipality, how do I apply this on permits, contracts, procurement, vendor project compliance, etc. Now, where in my organization will I find or create the expertise to solve this without adding a lot of costs for society? Maybe can I do this within my current budget? How do I know these aircraft above my cities are doing the right things for the right reasons according to all rules and regulations? These are questions that we try to answer with the system that we're building. On the next slide, you can see a very abstract picture of the thing that we are doing. If I make it very concrete, as we say in Dutch, which is not the right word, I'm sure, is that we're building a system, and with that system, we're trying to find out if we can answer all these questions that will make it possible to scale up urban air mobility. And with this, I would like to end my presentation because time is running out. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ruud. Very interesting. I think you combine several elements of what was presented earlier also by Vassilis explaining how the ecosystem looks like. You actually link concrete questions to all of these components of the ecosystem. Very, very interesting. What we notice in our network is that there is that you have people who are working in cities on drones, mainly out of economic development purposes, and that the mobility questions are will come later, so that we are at a stage that it is more about initiating innovation. Are you agreeing with that statement? Do you recognize that? Do you meet a lot of mobility colleagues on this topic, or more economic development colleagues?
I agree with your observation. It's the latter one. So innovation and economical development, that is what's driving at this moment. I think, and that this is where Vassilis gives a good insight in that urban air mobility is not just about things in the air, but it's an integrated part of mobility, and it is about changing how we look at mobility, and not as a field of extra mobility, let's say. It should be an integration of integrated in total mobility.
Okay, good. We'll hear from you later as well, Ruud, in the panel. I also want to point out an important message in the chat of a sister project of Flying Forward, the Airmore project, where Renske, the coordinator of the project, is inviting all cities to apply to become a follower city, replicator city. So a very interesting offer. Do take a look at that. And Kathy, a bit of I say that comments behind the scenes. There's in the Q&A, there's a question specifically for you. If you could take a look at that, that would be great, and try to answer in writing to Roger. Yes, Vassilis?
Ivo, could I just compliment what Ruud mentioned?
Yes, of course. You have been named, so you can answer. Yeah, that's,
Here we see a sort of contradiction, because it is right. The majority of the cities, the way they are involved, they are more from the economic development, but not exclusively. There are some of them that they really try to take and explore really the mobility aspect, but there are very few compared to the majority. The contradiction comes that when we see that the local authorities are still at the point of seeing this as an innovation topic, not a mobility, we see that the industry, whether it is from aviation or from the digital perspective, comes and says in a few years we're going to have mobility solutions. So this is where we see a sort of contradiction and misalignment of even, expectations. And this is where I think as a society, again, we need to align. This is what I do hope the use-based regulatory framework, the thinking of the SUMP can start to bring the reality factor to all stakeholders to have a common understanding of what can happen. Because yes, some eVTOLs, for example, air taxis, could be available certified in the next 5 years. But what will be the mobility infrastructure and the mobility integration for this to happen? Otherwise, we will be talking about replacement of helicopters with some electric eVTOLs, but that's not the point, although it could be a starting point.
Okay, yeah, indeed. And based on that alignment, we also need to work on capacity building. Yeah? And I think the alignment, we have done a survey also in the framework of the Giuseppe project, where it was clear that the expectations of the public sector and the expectations of the drones manufacturers and service providers, that they are even like in in time, the timeline is not aligned also. So the expectations of what kind of services will be flying are not aligned, but also the timeline in which this will happen. Okay, thank you, Vassilis, for that clarification. And as last panelist, we move to Elena Maximova. She will explain the position of ARC with regards to urban air mobility. Elena, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Ivo. And I'm happy to continue and agree with everything what's been said before me, especially with Vassilis and Ruud. And to start my presentation, I won't spend a lot of time on what urban air mobility can bring and how we can all benefit, because yeah, improved connectivity, first mile, last mile problem resolved, fast medical help, all this, all good. We're all waiting for it, but as it's a completely new topic and a completely new reality, we have to face a lot of challenges. And there are many known unknowns, such as like we are not sure that drones and air taxi will be safer, cheaper, more efficient than road transport. We are not sure that we will avoid noise problems. There are a lot of privacy issues. We are not sure who will investigate the accidents and who will collect the complaints, all this. But together with this, we see that that might be the case, that we will have a lot of unknowns. And to cover the topic completely and to be able to roll out this whole issue, we have to involve cities and regions from the beginning. And why we have to do this is just because we, as airport regions, we know how to live under the planes. We have a lot of experience, basically, and we know how many problems the aviation noise can bring. And we also know that aviation authorities, they are, of course, because of their work, they are focusing a lot on technical issues and regulations, and they're not able to take this regional dimension always into account. So that's why regions and cities have to step in. And here I will just briefly cover, I won't list all the topics where this collaboration can help. But for example, yeah, authorities can decide where to build the takeoff and landing sites. They can decide on the minimum altitude. They can, of course, work on noise and visual pollution. So a lot of about security, and of course, a lot about environment, because yeah, they can establish no-fly zones and set up and support sustainable infrastructure for drones. And to continue our actions and to support our position, we will of course submit all our comments to EASA, and we will highlight the importance of multi-level governance of urban space, and we will continue to raise awareness among cities, because yeah, this is the important step in this question. So that's it. Thank you. And if you have any questions, yeah, please contact me.
Elena?
Yeah?
If I just may clarify, the use space does not really mean urban space. It is a sort of brand name in the Commission. I think, I don't know, I see Giancarlo is online, but it came initially by talking about the unmanned space, which is the drone type or aircraft that are unmanned. But as we see, so it covers more than urban spaces. It's everywhere when you have this unmanned traffic that has to be interfaced with the traffic of airplanes that we fly with. Now, of course, today Airspace does not cover air taxis, but the point is that the whole concept will evolve to cover air taxis, so manned or aircraft who have people. Just a clarification, perhaps there is not a definite answer what Airspace is, what this U means. We can interpret it, I think from the local authority, urban space fits well, but I think from the aviation, it is more the unmanned.
Okay, thank you.
Can be a first recommendation also to EASA to have an understandable jargon that might be interesting also to involve new stakeholders. And also there's
Giancarlo just
Giancarlo who wrote
what,
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. While I invite the panelists, and I hope Sergi as well to join the stage again, open the cameras. I will try my own technical capabilities by launching a poll question to you. And having heard all the stories about urban air mobility, the different standpoints of different stakeholders in the ecosystem, I will ask you to answer to the question, what impact do you think urban air mobility will have in the future? And it ranges from highly positive to highly negative, and you can also, it's not a disgrace, answer that you don't know. I mean, I think the past week has shown that the future is difficult to predict. Okay, we'll let you answer for a second and I will maybe start with introducing also the first question for the panel, and starting from the end user, maybe the traveler or the person who uses the urban air mobility service. What does talking to Kathy then as the principal representative of the end user, how do you look at acceptance of these services? And if you think of services, what would you need? Would you see as services that deserve prioritization in view of user needs? And you can also, of course, go beyond the study that you've done and also bring in the insights of EPF itself. Please go ahead, Kathy. Yeah.
So I will answer your question with another question, maybe. I think when we think about acceptance, we also have to ask ourselves the question: what's in it for the end users? What's in it for the citizens? What's in it for society? And if we can answer those questions with real benefits, real needs that are being met, then I think we're already in a good way. So from my perspective, I think any service, whether it's UAM, it's mobility, or not at all, it needs to have a real benefit for people to accept it and then to want to use it, right? Because acceptance is really the precursor towards adoption and to using a service. So I think also when we talk about acceptance, we also should keep in mind, of course, what people want, what people need, and how they can benefit from it. So that also brings then the perspectives that was mentioned already, I think by Vassilis, about inclusivity, accessibility, making sure that a service doesn't just fit a niche market, it doesn't just serve a select group of people who can afford it, who can access it physically, but really making sure that it's inclusive and beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. You mentioned fairness or equity of the system as well. That's important, of course. Any of the panelists who want to react to that?
I think, if I may, Ivo, I think, yes, regarding this question, it's important for sure how many people will use it and what type of people will use it. but it's two, what is the impact? Let's say, the vast majority of us, I guess, we don't use big ships. We are not owners of big ships. We accept them. Yeah, they are there. Rich people use them. They have them. So no problem. Because what? Because the impact is very low. They're very low to normal people in normal life. But going down to this, what the matters we are talking today about urban mobility, urban air mobility, if, for example, looking from only the data, I was surprised the other day I read an article, it was quite well based. There was a poll in Great Britain. Only 49% of the people didn't get a plane in Great Britain. So if you think of that, the number in Europe and the continent will be much, much, much bigger. But okay, aviation in general is accepted. Some people complain because they have the noise nearby. Other people complain a little bit because the general impact, but this is a fewer people. So I think it's very important for the idea of the key issue of the acceptance, the social, mainly the political one, because it's linked at least in the European Union that we know and we live, thanks God, and in Britain for sure, I mean in Britain as well, in other parts, but not so many. It's like, what is the impact? So as much as we can minimize the impact, the bigger the acceptance will be, I think. Not to focus so much in who is using that and what is the profit of that, because, yeah, I think it's not really the key issue of that. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on that, Vassilis or Ruud?
Yes, I would like to touch on both topics here, about this societal acceptance and what Katie mentioned about the user needs. I think we all agree there must be a benefit. I think we need to take a wider perspective than the user, because here is the citizens, and it could be non-users that can be impacted by this type of technologies. We have not done this for other modes. So someone can say, why should we do it for this? Because, for example, nobody has thought for cars. You know, if you are a pedestrian and you have an accident or you breathe, you know, the emissions, this is an impact of you. But nobody perhaps has thought that, and nobody obstructed for this to happen. When it comes to aviation, it's always a bit more scrutinized, everything. At the same time, it's an opportunity that we try to learn from mistakes from other sectors and apply here and then back. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of more than just the user. Of course, it could be the core. At the same time, just what the users tell you does not mean it's necessarily the right thing. Because even, for example, with cars, in the name of convenience, many years ago, everybody started to use or own a car. And everybody would like to have a car. And what happens today, we have traffic congestions and the cities, in fact, they don't use a car, use public transport. So this is where we need to find the balance between the actual user needs and convenience and the more, say, high-level policy and even, you know, look into the future. Today, the problem we have is that whatever we're talking about, studies on acceptance, we can only speculate because there is nothing outside that really flies at scale. So we can have real reactions from people. So we can only speculate what this could be. And I think we have to take this into consideration. It is not that there is an existing market and we just put a new product. It is something that does not exist.
If I can add to Vassilis,
yes.
I think we wouldn't have cars at all if we asked the people, right? In the 19th century, we would have faster horses by now. So.
Absolutely, and that's why that was the point I wanted to conclude. Whatever happens with the acceptance, it is not that it will be zero impact. I mean, even negative impact. In everything we do is a trade-off. It's a cost-benefit analysis. So we now as a society, we have to take, you know, this to make this trade-off. Do we want to use this for pizza deliveries, for example, or just for medical deliveries? So we will have to give the priority.
Yeah, there's a question also whether there are some kind of studies done on the mobility impact of prognosis of how it can improve urban mobility. I don't know if any of you has that kind of insight. I remember figures that you once mentioned, Vassilis, that were quite enormous in terms of replacement capacity of trips, for instance, for goods. If we look at 2-3% of movements, we are at huge numbers of movements. Yeah, that's
this is exactly the reality factor, because I think you referred to what I was mentioning. If you take a city like Paris, you have 40 to 50 million transits per day of any mode, either say just a person moving, whether you use the bus, the train, or a scooter. So we have 40 to 50 million movements. In airspace, we cannot compete, sorry, in aviation, we cannot compare to that. So we have to acknowledge even a very small percentage that it could be 20, 30, 50,000 flights is already an enormous number of flights over a region. To start thinking, I could have a contribution to this system. Just imagine that before COVID, we used to have 25 to 30,000 flights per day over Europe, commercial planes. Just to understand what we're talking about, that we could have this amount in a big city in a day or even in 1 or 2 hours. So from the aviation perspective, it's a huge thing, but from the wider mobility, it's only small. Still, however, this has to be complementary. They have to coexist.
Okay, I want to move to the results of the poll, and I will share the results. No, I think you can see them on the screen. I don't have your view, so I don't know it. So, but in general, and we might have a little a biased audience. But for now, the people say they see positive, highly positive results, and the number of I don't knows equals the sum of those, almost equals the sum of those who are neutral, negative, or highly negatively assessing the impact. Before moving to the next topic in the discussion, I would like to say, of course, that impacts, benefits, do no harm is one element of measuring acceptance, of course. I think from a side of authorities, there's also the opportunity cost, the political capital, the time and resources you have to spend on managing this are not spent on other solutions. So that's also something to take into account when it comes to understanding impacts. So if you would have authorities that now completely focus on this without taking care of other mobility issues, I mean, they won't find a lot of support, I think, from their citizens. Okay, we move to the next level. From the end user, we move to the cities and regions, where my question would be, and then starting from Ruud, but also from Sergi, is the question on what are now, after the research end, let's say, what are immediate next steps to get this going, to get urban air mobility into the integrated at a systemic level in a city or a region. Ruud, do you have thoughts? If you were the mayor of Eindhoven, what would you do?
Well, I do. So besides looking at urban air mobility as an integral part of mobility, which is important, that's a mindset of things on which Vassilis is working very hard. I think the barrier at this moment for a municipality to consider upscaling UAM or have, let's say, in Eindhoven, there are several companies that would now ask to have regular UAM flights above the cities. Then that's a huge barrier for those municipalities, because they of course they do not have the knowledge of this field of expertise. They do not have the required knowledge of regulations and law, etc. Now they want to use services, UTM services, for instance, maybe. What do they need to look at? How do they know if these services are compliant in all ways necessary to EU regulations, standards, etc. We'll need a big investment and a big effort from municipalities. And I think they should take a look at how to organize this and how to lower this investment. And I think that the end results of our project will guide them in a way that can help them out on that field.
Okay, thank you. Sergi, I would like you to react as well, and maybe also take into account the comment of Basil Lofi in the chat, who says, we're talking about urban air mobility, but maybe rural air mobility has much more potential. So maybe the regions have to take more action than the cities.
I think the comment it's a very proper comment, but the point is probably the rural air mobility, it's easier. So that's why I think we are focusing not on, for other reasons as well, but especially for this one, that it's much complicated because it's much complex, and it's where the vast majority, for the good or for the bad, of the people live, and where in this aspect we see more or less easily that the problems will come there. I think what you mentioned, I think, and it's connected too with the issue of the acceptance. I think my opinion is coming from my experience at 27 years of vice mayor of the city of El Prat. This is where the airport of Barcelona is placed. And I was member 2 of the Metropolitan Government of Barcelona in the Board of Transport. So I think there are 2 issues. One, the one that Vassilis it's trying to push, and he's not only him, but as you mentioned very well, Ivo, at the presentation, one of the our guide, one of the most famous guide is regions have and cities have to have a word when Europe structure how we're going to deal with this. And this is important. And I think that one of the main goals of this event is to awake the regions and to awake the cities, because it's now they are fixing. And I am afraid that not only that, maybe what it comes from that it can be changed, like everything, or almost everything, especially the law, the regulations, and so on. But I know from the regions and from the local governments, when they have the feeling, wow, we have not been questioned, no one has asked us, no one has commented us, then it's like, no. Or, the first reaction is no. I think this is quite dangerous, because if you put together this reaction of no one asked me, you didn't take care of our opinion. And we should avoid this as much as possible. As much as possible. The second one, and we commented yesterday in Barcelona, because we have a meeting with Vassilis connected with the World Mobile, is that it must be a part of the sustainable urban mobility plans, because again, there are machines to move people, I think not a lot, and to move things quite a lot. My personal opinion in the future, but we will see. But it's mobility, so it has to be integrated. If it is something that it's not really integrated in the system, then we will have more problems, and the city should go work in the 2 directions. I am here, and they have to be active. And second is, well, the drones have to take off and land, even if it is vertical, in a place. If they leave a packet, this packet in the rural areas, they will leave the packet in front of your door because you have a big garden, but not in cities like Barcelona, that there is not houses with garden. So there must be a place where the thing go, and the last mile by bike, by motor, by van has to be done, has to be taken. So there it's a place, so it has to be integrated. And if people want to go there to pick it up by themselves, the package or whatever, they have to have a place where to park, they have to be a building well to get the reception of the packet and to say, thank you, I take it, and sign the bill or whatever. So it has to be integrated, because it's, at the end of the day, as Elena mentioned very well, revolutionary, a new mode of transport, but then it's a mode of transport in a very dense places like cities here.
Okay. Thank you. I'll move to the next question, also because time is running out, and I think we have to ask that question. It's the question of what Europe can do to support the process, or how we as stakeholders can help European institutions also in this regard. And I would like to start with you, Vassilis, to give a couple of ideas around that, and maybe also reflecting the discussion in the chat, which is dealing with the nature of research and innovation activities that are happening, lack of coordination, or as other people say, complementarity between all these research endeavors. Maybe the idea that we miss a mission for that research, like we are now used to missions in research with going towards a specific target or a societal objective we want to reach. Maybe that could help coordination, just a thought. So yeah, question to you, Vassilis, what the
what
EU
you say
can bring to us.
Yes, we don't have to forget at this moment it is running a process by the European Commission on defining the so-called drone strategy 2.0. There are different hearings, and the Commission is trying to understand, what is coming from the bottom-up approach in order to define this. So this is why places like this, all the events can contribute to information to better understand this. I think already from the regulatory perspective, we are quite advanced. We have a unique system that is called Airspace. Other areas in the world, they just have evolutions of existing airspace. Here we started from scratch. And in this new type of system, we have acknowledged already the role of local authorities. The question is this enough? Perhaps it is not. We need to go further, but we don't have to forget we're just at the beginning of something. So I think the years to come, the role of the local authorities, whether regions or municipalities, will be even more important, and they will start embrace the potential benefits or try to mitigate risks or negative impacts. So I think what the Commission could do, or the associations like the ones here, is to try to facilitate these cross-sectoral dialogues, and even at some point in time to understand that the urban air mobility, this is what I usually say, it is not just aviation. It is more, at least to my view, about mobility using aviation technologies. So perhaps to have more funding that is coming from the mobility part of the Commission, exploring more socioeconomic, social issues. We have a quite important funding, I think, on the pure aviation. This has to be a new type of funding, not dealing with the CESAR or DGRTD aviation funding. Is a new type of funding that could address this type of topics. In terms of coordination, this is something we have heard also during the hearings on and Space. There is a need of coordination between projects, between knowledge that is generated, so we can really optimize the public money already put in place. And I can just give you a hint, at least from the project and initiative perspective, we will be launching and announcing a community on that topic during the Amsterdam Drone Week. So look at the program, and on Wednesday you will see a session about European projects, and you can see what we start to put in place to contribute towards that. And we will be very happy to have the support not only of projects, but also policymakers, the Commission, to help us to integrate all of this knowledge and lessons learned.
Okay, I think that's a great conclusion also for our event. We are 1.5 hours far discussing this topic. I think we have heard from everybody of you. We've had a good exchange also in the chat and in the Q&A. Please do take a look also for the final comments there. Some of them could be answered also by individual panelists, maybe. The role of airports is discussed there, for instance. So a lot to take on board in future exchanges. I think the 3 messages: do take a look at the EASA consultation. I think that's something really to take a look at. Do take a look at the European projects and initiatives that have been presented today, with UIC2, with Flying Forward, AURORA, AIRMOR, etc. Giuseppe also in the background. And thirdly, there is indeed in this community the milestone for the to meet in the Amsterdam Drone Week. For those people who arrive more from the urban mobility angle, Drone Week runs in parallel in the same campus with Intertraffic, which is a large urban mobility equipment fair. So you can, I will go to both events. It's very practical that they are close to each other. So you can meet both worlds. Okay, I leave it at this. I want to thank specifically ARC for bringing this together. With Elena, who has done a great job getting the speakers confirmed, doing the promotion in cooperation with my colleague Manon. And I would like to thank once more Vassilis, Katie, Ruth and Sergi for speaking, and also Mr. Ortyl for hosting on the side of the Committee of the Regions. Thank you very much, and we'll definitely meet again in a drone port or somewhere else. We'll see where that will be. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.